live and on time. Give me just a moment, y'all. I can get the word out. It is a little cold here today, snowing, so a bit chilly. Let's get this party started though. Welcome to the Bonnet Chronicles. I am your host, Kalari GXC. We are about to kick off, hopefully, an hour of positivity, but it can't go without me being real about some things before I start with the heart of the conversation. I just want to get the word out so that people know we are live. Okay, getting the word out, and we're going to get it started. So, I know we're almost near the end of the year, and while most people they start doing a whole bunch of reviews, I am going to try my best to remind everybody of not only the things that are at stake, but why we're doing so much, why we do these Bonnet Chronicles, and the positiveness of it. And welcome to the chat, beans. One of the things that I feel like was really prevalent this week, outside the obvious news story that we're going to get to in a moment, was just a bunch of people utilizing Twitter to threaten Black people, POC, anybody non white, and I'm assuming straight Christian males. A lot of you were throwing around the whole idea of leveling the playing field by having hateful right wing rhetoric back on the site, saying things like, you're going to revoke your ally card if we're not nicer to you. When you look at the way white people legitimately turn out free competence for legit fascism under the guise of Christianity, when you look at the way that some of them behave in the name of supposed conservative values, and then you threaten to take an ally card from me, you can go sit with your kin and your peers that you don't want to argue with anyway. I am not here to try and force anybody to stand with me on the path of pragmatism. And what I really feel is that some of you don't understand that you can't be on the path of pragmatism fully yet, because until you get it out of your mentality that it won't be about you. Most aren't going to notice you doing the right thing, but you're doing it for the actual outcome of the right thing. When you help us by voting, when you organize, when you phone bank, when you postcard, you are doing that for the cause. You might not ever get recognized. And there are plenty. I've seen plenty of Democrats who went to the bat for things. And yeah, it would probably feel nice to them to get some recognition for some. But most of us put our heads down and do what we got to do, because the point is we need people leading us, not just taking the position, getting a bunch of money and power, and making it harder for Americans to survive. And pragmatists understood from the get go, and welcome to the chat, respect, that when you elect somebody who is for all of us, that means all of us. That doesn't just mean people that look and vote and act like us. That means even the idiots that hate us. We are all in for a better America. And what troubles me this whole week, welcome to the chat, Cherry Antico, was watching supposed allies whose voter numbers ain't matching their level of being able to threaten my black ass with anything, telling me, well, you don't need us. And it's like, it's not about not needing you. It is about the fact that some of you barely do your bare minimum. Those turnout numbers don't lie. They could have been way better than they were, but they weren't. And those of you who do the right thing are still expecting a pat on the head, a trophy, and fanfare when you don't press the people around you. And I get it. Everybody has that relative that you just can't talk to. You can't get through to them. You put up with them if you have to, but most of the time you avoid them. But some of you know you key and kick it with people who are voting against our rights, voting against our humanity, and it's got to stop. And I want more people who claim to be on the same side as us to actually show it without telling us. Because a lot of you can say, "You're my ally." You can scream it at me. You can say BLM. But the moment my black ass starts talking, it becomes an issue. And we see that. And this week, with people talking about revoking their ally cards and maybe they'll just stay home and other stupid threats in regards to Georgia, which I can't wait to talk about tonight. Because as much as I want to rally against certain demographic, yous aren't important. And I think yous are starting to feel and see that, and it might hurt some of yous. But I think for a lot of yous are feeling relief that finally we can move on with or without you. We are going to fight and fight hard. And even though there's been some antics, I seen the earlier news story, Miss Party City Wig Craft Skirt, as I like to call Christian cinema, decided what we all knew. We been knew she wasn't a real Democrat. She utilized our resources. She utilized our party to try to leverage herself some money. That's all it's been about. Her friend just came out in a long thread that I got finished reading. They had agreed when they both ran to run clean campaign, to stand by one another because they were actually friends. Christian decided winning. That's all she cared about. And now all these Rose Bros are talking about, oh, I wish I could debate with some actual Christian cinema fans because they know. They know she's a spoiler. That no matter what we do in Arizona now, we have to worry about their Manchurian candidate. It's bad enough Vermont has that with Sleepy Grandpa, who the only thing we got going for us with that is there's no way he can live another 20 years. But for cinema, she is young, she is willing to be bought, and she is going to be trouble for our party. And right now, she's been playing people like a fiddle. She's got Schumer saying, well, she's a good senator. We should keep her on committees. It doesn't matter if she votes against actual progressive stuff that we could utilize to help Americans. We need to keep her because Senator knows who to talk to, how to talk to them. But the thing is, and I say this as somebody who was born under the snake sign, you can only manipulate so much for so long. You can only get away with your antics for so long when we have people who are stronger conviction, better with constituents, and out there. Ruben Galeo just made his announcement that he's planning to primary her. He is planning to run because he really doesn't have to primary her now that she's no longer a Democrat. And while it will be harder because she is there to split the vote, this is going to be on Arizonans who claim to be Dems who are disappointed and hurting right now that she stabbed you in the back to instead of just focusing on that hurt, to focus on organizing, to focus on supporting your actual Democratic candidates and to show Kristen what it means to waste our time. She's not irreplaceable, y'all. And she needs to be a footnote in why we need to strongly vet who runs under our name. We need to strongly condemn anybody who utilizes our resources, our party funds, and everything else, but has no real want or desire to look after all of us. It is on us as voters to start taking this seriously. I knew, not even having to re-see that video of her curtsying and thumbs down and the $15 an hour, not even mandatory. It was something that by state could have been evaluated, but it would have helped so many struggling families with that wage increase. But she didn't care. And now that we have gotten several victories, which I'm going to talk about tonight, several key victories has taken her ability to leverage her votes and leverage her lack of votes. Of course, she doesn't want to be a Democrat no more. She doesn't see the point in it. She knows that if she had stayed under the party banner, she was going to be primaried anyway. So what we need to do is remember that in spite Senator Schumer saying she's a good senator, she really isn't. In fact, most of the negative press that I thought at first was hyperbolic, I thought yous were just making boogeymans of her, and I'm gonna be honest. I didn't really know much about her except her wild, ridiculous outfits and those legitimate Party City wigs. But when you started really following both the paper trail, which I love to do as a bookkeeper, the amount of donations from questionable people, the outright way she vetoes things like the John Lewis Act that was supposed to help voter against voter suppression, you can see that Christian knew her time was done. She was there to be a destabilizer, and she got enough destabilization through her belt. And that's all she's going to be at this point. It's just a spoiler candidate to keep that position out of the hands of our party. And we have to work around her. And if you are in Arizona, you have to remember that as you go into the future, that she is going to be a spoiler candidate. She is going to be there to try to siphon any votes that could potentially keep the seat in the name of Democrats. That's all she's been there to do. She is literally that person. But unfortunately for Christian, I don't think she understands how tired of the GOP we are. And while the news and everybody else wants to focus on the negative, I am here today to talk about the positive stuff. She is definitely bought and sold. I'm telling you, it is ridiculous. But I am so proud of the wins that we got this year, y'all. I am so happy with the things that we were able to accomplish despite antics. One of the things that you see here in this cartoon, even though it's parodying a very serious news story, I think a lot of us can agree that I would have definitely allowed for Biden to trade Trump over for Brittany Griner. I don't care how you feel about her situation. I know some white people are like, ah, she did something illegal. She had CBD oil in a vape pen. She didn't do anything illegal. She was set the fuck up by a damn dictator who wanted to utilize her as a political pawn. That's the reality of this situation. But what was worse was having our media frame this as, oh, Biden picked Griner over poor old Paul. Poor Paul's a victim too. Let's ignore the fact that Paul, a former Marine, because I gotta remind people he's dishonorably discharged for allegedly committing both check fraud, social security identity theft, and several other very curious alleged, since I have to use the fucking word alleged with him, crimes. And he was over in Russia for some reason, despite all of that. And now he is a political prisoner. And if you ask anybody white so far, for some reason they seem to believe that, oh, we're just letting this hero rot in some Russian prison while you bring home some basketball player, because they know they would never be able to say what they're really saying behind closed doors about Brittany. But they were in our faces the last few months telling us what your president gonna do. She's gonna die in that Russian prison. Some of the nasty shit people have said to me alone on Twitter. And I know because I blocked a lot of you. Y'all thought you was slick coming at me about why you voting them. They're just gonna let her die over there in Russia. And we knew that wasn't the case because we understood we had people who knew how to negotiate at the wheel. But we took your nonsense, and then even doing it wasn't good enough. Some young man that I got rid of yesterday, in my mentions talking about, well, it's nice that they were able to get her out, but what about the people? What about the people here? Here in Michigan, young man, because I don't know if you're lurking or stalking my stuff. You felt need to skip your ass on my Twitter, so I know you know who I am. But if you did know, because we reelected Gretchen Whitmer and several others, I can't wait to read the list of the people just here in Michigan that won. We elected a Democrat who not only cares about her people, but cared about the fact that people were being put in jail for things like pot, put in jail for things like drug offense, lives destroyed for an addiction instead of understanding. We have been working and seeing legislation being put forth that not only will expound records of people who were arrested for that, but a lot of people who were incarcerated for such were freed. That's the power of having governors and legislators who give a crap about stuff like that. And that comes from us voting. Now, I made a Bonnet, not even Bonnet Chronicles, mental health vlog earlier about something that negatively impacts my family because I'm hopeful that somebody in Michigan legislator sees it and understands the issue that families with disabilities go through in order to live a regular life, even though our illnesses make it hard financially. But when I say that young man slided into my Twitter to try to take from this momentous story, to take from the fact that this presidential administration, because I know, and President Biden would say, this wasn't him alone. He has a whole team of competence working together and to understand the level of nuance that goes into negotiating with somebody who honestly is not rap tight like Vladimir Putin. A man who said, like, I could use low range nukes on the Ukraine and it won't be bad. I'll be in my bunker. I'm only taking people that I trust, and I don't trust everybody. The man is deranged, and he was using Brittany Griner. Now I know the fucker that we traded her for was supposedly this big bad arms dealer and blah blah blah. But the fact that these are the people that are loudest about this trade not being fair and blah, blah. You've literally taken Christmas card pictures with AR-15s. I don't think one Russian arms trader is as dangerous as a whole armed country. But okay. I mean, the arguments that people are trying to make against Brittany Griner's trade to be free are insane and insidiously racist. And we see you. You can't justify the arguments you're making against her because they don't make sense. Even Paul Whelan's family said, we understand how negotiations go. POWs are not an easy thing to negotiate. I remember growing up, I believe it was 8 men were held prisoner in either Iran or Iraq. I was a little girl then, so my memory on the whole situation was spotty, but I do remember it was President Carter who had to try and negotiate their freedom. And Reagan got credit for it, which still doesn't make it boggles my mind the amount of stuff that people allowed Reagan to take credit for when it was Jimmy Carter's negotiations. And thank you for that respect. I was trying to remember if it was Iran or Iraq. And what troubled me about the Iranian situation was so many people want to bring patriotism and racism and all this other ism into delicate negotiations. And one of the things that I heard the last couple of hours, even from people who have absolutely no political chops, no idea how diplomacy or any of those kind of negotiations were, talking about, oh, they should have got more. They should have had this. They should. What you need to do is understand that, yeah, negotiation between rational grown people would be nice. If Brittany had committed a crime in France, if she had committed a crime in even freaking Belgium or Germany, there might have been more leeway to have peaceful negotiations. But those countries don't normally house Americans like POWs. The only other place that I can think of that would have been worse for her to have become a political prisoner would have been Kim Jong's territory. I'm afraid to say their country because they like to threaten nukes at everything. But when I say that to be a Russian anything right now is precarious, but to be an LGBTQ black woman in Russia and a prisoner, she had to cut her hair because washing her hair in a literal penal colony meant she was getting sick. They were determined for her spirit to be broken first and then her body next. And you cannot convince me because we've seen these kind of camps. They have them all over these dictatorships. They're meant to break the spirit of their captives and then break them. And when I say that Brittany's life was in imminent danger in that place, and that I am so happy this administration pulled forward and got her out, I am not being hyperbolic. And it is really sickening how many people of a certain demographic want to be in their field, whether they're former NFL players, which y'all are not clean enough with your CTE rage, your tax fraud committing, stealing from welfare recipient types to be saying anything about Brittany Griner. So I don't need the opinion of Boomer Esiason, some cheerleader wife, or anybody else who wants to say something negative. Because you all have made it clear what you feel about black people anyway. So we don't want to hear from you about how you feel about this trade or what the president should or could do. It's always white people who seem to think they can do this better than the people who are doing it without understanding the nuances of both negotiation and literally having to negotiate with a despot who is unstable enough to want to nuke his own people. I need you to open your eyes to how your hubris and your entitlement cloud your judgment. This administration has done so much. I am going to get to all the stuff that he actually got passed on top of that. But I really want to get to this list of wins because we have so many people in our media, especially, that only want to focus on the negative. And yes, I know, technically, we no longer have a House majority. The Republicans are going to have limited control. It is not a strong majority like they try to push in the news. In fact, I get to congratulate a bunch of reps. So I'm going to start this off with the governors who won in 2022 this year, starting with Janet Mills of Maine, Kathy Hochul, who I know is a technicality. She had to step in because Andrew Cuomo is garbage. But I still want to congratulate her for holding the state together. Maura Healey of Massachusetts, Ned Lamont of Connecticut, Wes Moore of Maryland, Daniel McKee of Rhode Island, Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, which would have made my friend Liz so happy. Lynn, I know you were watching over us for that one. Gretchen Whitmer, and she was part of a three-way trinity of strong candidates who helped us take all the GOP mudslinging and say, you can't touch us with that. Because not only did we re-elect Gretchen Whitmer, we kept AG Dana Nessel, and then we got Jocelyn Benson as our SOS. Three strong Democratic women who, along with Senator Stabenow, uh, Deb Dingle, and so many others that I will name later on in this list as well, are going to make sure that Michigan not only stays taking care of all of its constituents, no matter where you fall in the political spectrum, but make sure that this state no longer falls into the rural rot that has affected so many states. Now, to finish off with the governors, we have J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, Tony Evers of Wisconsin, who, along with Josh Kaul as his AG and Doug LaFollette as his SOS, have a three-way as well. Tim Walz of Minnesota, who follows up with Keith Ellison as his AG, Steve Simon as their SOS for another three-way trifecta. Laura Kelly of Kansas, Jared Polis of Colorado, Michelle Lujan Grisham of New Mexico, Katie Hobbs of Arizona with Adrian Fontes as her SOS, Gavin Newsom of California, Tina Kotek of Oregon, and Joshua Green of Hawaii, rounded it out with AG Aaron Ford and SOS Cisco Aguilar in Nevada. Those are just on a state and municipal level without going into justices. But I think people need to understand that when your state leaders are strong, when your governor, your SOS, your AG care about all of you, you will reap such deep benefits. You will see legislation passed that help all of you. And we are seeing that us versus states like Georgia, which I'm going to get to because even though Kemp is still going to run shit into the ground, they still have a fighting chance. Even Florida, because I was shocked when I was compiling this list, and thank you, Ballotpedia, but there were several shocking wins that our media isn't going to talk about because they only want to talk about the negatives. And I am just so proud of that. And I'm going to get to now our house because they want to talk about the house. They want to talk about how the house is lost or how the Democrats are going to, how it affects Biden. And we won a lot of key races, starting with Alaska, with Mary Petola, who people didn't think were going to win. But she not only won her primary, but she beat Sarah Palin, who I love that video of her just standing there in a skirt that was way too short and too tight, looking like a whole ass fool with a sheet cake by her because she just knew she was going to win and celebrate. I hope she cried on the icing because she totally lost. We have Sheila Shaffolis McCormick in Florida. She won the 20th district. We have Troy Carter in Louisiana, who won the 2nd district. Lucy McBath, who I love. I personally have talked about her story, how she lost her son to hate, how she turned that pain into progress, and she has done so well for Georgia. They changed her district up. They tried to gerrymander her out. She went from the 6th to the 7th, and she is still a representative. I will always sing Lucy McBath's praises because she came from a place of pain and turned it into power and empowerment because she cares. And I want to see her continue on because she's a light. We have Greg Landsman of Ohio's first, Vincent Gonzalez Jr. of Texas 31st, who unseated a Republican, y'all. So I don't want to hear anything about how it can't happen in Texas. It can and it will. We have Gabriel Vasquez in New Mexico's 2nd district, another race that people said was unwinnable. We proved that wrong. Haley Stevens in Michigan's 11th, Yadira Karyevo in Colorado's 8th, Gerard Nadler in New York's 12th, Hillary Sheldon, another Michigan win in Michigan's 3rd district, Haley Stevens in Michigan's 11th district, Dan Kildee, who had some of the most annoying campaign commercials. I'm not going to lie, Mr. Kildee. Your commercials annoyed the heck out of me because there was a lot of what about isms, but we still elected you and you won the 11th district. Christopher DeLuzio in Pennsylvania's 17th. Matt Cartwright in Pennsylvania's 8th. Annie Koosters in New Hampshire's 2nd. Chris Pappas in New Hampshire's 1st. Sharice Davis in Kansas 3rd, and I am so proud of Sharice. She put up with a lot on her first run. She put up with the squad trying to attack her, literally trying to run some dusty old bum against her, and Sharice stayed strong because her constituents matter to her, and she matters to them. And I am so glad that she won her reelection. Marcy Kaptur, Ohio's 9th. Abigail Spanberger, Virginia 7th. Eliza Slotkins, Michigan 7th. Marie Newman, Illinois 6th. Al Larson, Florida 2nd. Maxwell Alejandro Frost, Florida 10th. Now you hear a bit more joy in my name saying Maxwell's name. He is the first Gen Z elected to Congress. He is a young man who decided, you know what, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I am going to run and I am going to win. And he is young. But just because somebody's young doesn't mean they don't have the chance to make waves. And this young man, instead of sitting around saying, nothing's going to change, I can't do nothing about it, he said, no, I am going to be the change. And I am so proud of Florida for getting it together and giving this young man the chance. I can't wait to see what he does. We have Henry Corella in Texas 28, Wiley Nickel in NC's 13th. He flipped that seat blue. We have not had a Democratic representative in this District 13 in over 10 years, actually 12 years. It's the first time since 2010 that a Democrat has held that seat in NC. But if you ask the news, oh, it's bad. No, it's not. And the list is still going because we have Marianne Stansberry in New Mexico's 1st, Pat Ryan in New York's 19th, Sean Casten in Illinois' 6th, Jamie McLeod Skinner in Oregon's 5th, Kim Schreier in Washington's 8th, Eric Sorensen in Illinois' 17th, Maria Glusenkamp Perez. Some of y'all have some long ass names, but I want to give you proper respect. Washington's 3rd. Chantel Brown gets an honorary mention because she won last year, but she is doing so much work this year. And I love that Ohio's 11th is represented by her. And I got to give props to Lauren Underwood for all the bills that she's passing, which I will get to when I get to the legislation part of the night. For mayoral, we have Karen Bass, who won Los Angeles despite her opponent trying to pump as much money into his campaign as he possibly could, having celebrities go to bat for him, knowing that he became a Dem over fucking night. But Karen Bass won because she cares about Los Angeles. She cares about the people. It's not about just getting rid of the homeless. She wants to do right by Los Angeles, and y'all came out for her. We have Ashley Aiken of Anaheim, Pamela Goyens Browns of Las Vegas, Nevada, Cavalier Johnson, who technically identifies as nonpartisan but says he leans with the Democrats, is one of the first Black mayors of his area, so I have to give him props. We have Jalen Smith, who is only 18 years old and one of the first Black 18-year-old mayors of Earl, Arkansas. You can't beat these wins. And now, of 100 major cities, Democrats are mayor of 62 cities that are considered major influences in the United States. That is 62 cities that said, we need Democrats leading us. And we can expand that to more. And I know while people want to lament losses, I know I felt hard about Florida, Texas, and Georgia, but these are not lost states because while we didn't get the governors, we got the senators. And I cannot wait to talk about the senators like Ralph Warnock, who, despite everybody want to say, oh, it was too close, you look at the breakdown of who voted for who. We can see how Herschel Walker was set to be a freaking destabilizer, and how many white Georgians fell for that okie doke, thinking, well, he's Black, so it'll get Black people because they only vote for themselves. And Sarah, ma'am, you don't understand pragmatic. And this is why I didn't let Jared's little ass, when I came to for his neck on Tuesday, say shit about Black conservative voters, because I don't think you understand that we're not on the same vein. We are Black pragmatic voters. And it's not anybody who looks like us, because we knew Herschel Walker's game long ago. So it was insulting, to say the least. But we have joy because Black turnout trumped all y'all's little antics. And we could say congratulations to Raphael Warnock, our senator in GA, along with John Fetterman, who, once again, my friend Lynn went to bat before she passed. She wanted him to win because she did not want to see some outside carpetbagger like Mehmet Oz come and destabilize her state. And I am so glad that PA turned out and made sure that John Fetterman was able to claim victory in PA. We have Alex Padilla in CA, who I know there's some people that want to argue that it should have been a Black woman, but Black women weren't competing for this. And from what I heard, it was a lot of appointments. There's a lot going on in CA. It is not easy to just run for something in big states. And what drives me nuts are the people that want to find issue with this man who wants to work hard for us and who has helped give us a Senate majority. Y'all need to stop. Mark Kelly won his reelection in AZ, which shouldn't be shocking. He's a literal hero whose wife is amazing, and I am glad for that. Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire. Carolyn Cortez Mastro of Nevada, who some people really did not believe was going to win her election for some reason. But as Jamie Harrison has said, there is no such thing as an unwinnable election. All we have to do is get out and do it. We have Richard Blumenthal, who won a Connecticut seat, Brian Schatz of Hawaii, and Tammy Duckworth won her reelection in Illinois. Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, Chuck Schumer won his reelection, Ron Wyden of Oregon, Pat Murray of Washington, and Peter Welch of Vermont. All of those wins are because people got out to vote. And I don't blame you, respect. I have a slight respect for Senator Feinstein for the things she has done on the same vein as Representative Pelosi, Representative Waters, people who have been around long enough and understand how to navigate the shark infested waters of politics. But she needs to take the same cues as both Nancy has, as several people are who are getting up there have done, and start either grooming a protege or start looking for somebody who can step in to her shoes because it's time. And I'm not saying this like, oh, we need to get rid of all the old guard, because that rhetoric has been flying around too. And I don't ascribe to that. It's not about age, it is about effectiveness. And if you can no longer be effective in what you do, you need to step aside for somebody who can. And it is not about ageism, because our president, who I am going to support in 2024, so you can get the fuck out with any other speculation. I am for real Biden Harris 2024. Full stop. But when you look at those who want to push people out because you need new blood, that new blood needs to be on board with working for all of us, because that's what pragmatism means. And I know it is hard for some to accept. We dealt with the MAGAs, we dealt with the harassment, we dealt with a lot of garbage these last couple of years before 2021 brought in hope and compassion again. But we can't keep dwelling on the stuff that made us feel awful when we have so much to look forward to, so many big things that this administration, the appointees, and just the potential future could bring if we all stop making excuses for why we can't organize, why we can't name and shame the peers around us that don't do what they need to do. When we don't put our boots to the ground, not just to take protest selfies, but to get to those ballots and elect people who want to do the job. I want more Lauren Underwoods. More people willing to not only draft bills, but when I looked at her background and found out that not only did she work for the Department of Social Services in her state, she was a nurse. She legitimately had jobs where she got to work with people, where she got to see all different lifestyles, and she wanted to better represent and make legislation that helps us. And we need more people like her running and winning and making sure that our House passes bills that help all constituents, no matter what we look like, no matter how we feel, because no matter what, we've got those weirdos with their ideology. I've seen that crazy lady that went on a tirade against the Marriage Equality Act, which I'm going to get ready to talk to you about. All the acts and bills that actually got passed this year. Because like I said, this is about being positive. Our news only wants to talk about fails, only wants to talk about negative, only wants chaos and us upset. I want to talk about the good efforts that the Biden-Harris administration brought on to us. And one of the things they started off with was the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. It's a mental health and firearms regulation bill. It was passed by the 117th Congress, signed into law June 25th of 2022. It extends background checks for individuals under the age of 18 because we had nothing but chaos these last few years of 18-year-olds being able to legally purchase firearms. We just had what happened at the Tops issue in Buffalo. We've had Parkland. We have so many shootings that were legally allowed. Uvalde. It makes me choke up to think that these people were able to just do this without issue. And now, with this federal law being passed, it is going to be harder for an 18-year-old to justify why they need that much ammo and regulation. You have $11 billion, 11 billion. Oh my goodness, I thought that said million. $1 billion for mental health services, including increased funding for Medicaid certified community behavioral. That's a lot of words. It is just a program that will help people not only get counseling and therapy, but to help parents who I don't think people understand. I have a mental health issue. So I can speak on this from a place of knowing it costs a lot to get that help, to get medication that you need, to get even seen for like a few minutes to talk to a psychiatrist or a therapist, to get blood work done when you go. There's a lot that goes into mental health care that a lot of people didn't think about before this administration. And it is nice to see a bill that will help more people get the help they need because they need it. Now, it's not going to stop the racist rhetoric they grow up around because I don't believe that every racist has mental health problems. But some of these people, like that young man who shot and killed, I believe, 8 people last year in Michigan, that the cries for help were there. They legitimately have notes and drawings where he was saying he is breaking inside and nobody helped him. And if we had this in place, who knows? He might have been able to get the help he needed. So I am grateful to the legislators who helped pass this because there is so much that comes into this bill. 750 million for state grants to implement crisis intervention programs. Also, red flag laws that will allow authorities to confiscate firearms of individuals who have been determined by a court to be significant danger to themselves or others. This doesn't just mean the young people who write manifestos. This will help people who are in domestic violence situations, which we have seen a uptick of those gun violence things. I was just reading the other day about this young lady and her father who was found murdered, and her 2-year-old was there by himself. The violence has to stop. And providing $2 billion for a community-based violence prevention initiative, which I love, because as much as you want to try to trust state legislation, and I'm sorry, I've been in states where legislators don't always do things on the up and up. And even though I can't say that about the current state I'm in, because I really think we're in good hands with the trifecta of people that are running things, we do have issues with people that take these funds and go on lavish trips, take these funds and claim to dole it out to people, but people are still suffering under violence. So it will be nice to see community leaders who have their boots to the ground be able to get these funds and take action. That is what this is all about. We also have the Inflation Reduction Act. This bill was signed into law on August 16th, 2022, addressing climate change, healthcare costs, and tax enforcement. This includes a $369 billion investment to address energy security and climate change, an extension to the Affordable Care Act subsidies, which means the dental plan that a lot of us, and yeah, I know because I've been hearing about my teeth for years now, y'all, I'll finally be able to afford getting them done. Thank you, Mr. President. And allowing Medicare to negotiate certain drug prices, which for somebody who takes psychiatric medicines, that would be nice if it wouldn't cost me an arm and a leg to be able to take my meds to help me sleep. a 15% corporate minimum tax, a 1% stock buyback fee, and an enhanced internal revenue enforcement of an estimate $300 billion deficit reduction. Now, I know that for some, that last line was like, what the heck? And I don't blame you. If I didn't have to do this for a living back in the day, I would have been confused. But in layman's terms, this president has decided that instead of putting the burden of financial keeping stuff together on the backs of working Americans, on the backs of even the so called middle class, but to actually financially tax the people who make the most, which often are people who own businesses, own big businesses, and who have skirted the line of paying fair tax for well over 50 years now. And it is time for our Internal Revenue Service to not only investigate, but figure out why we keep losing billions of dollars in unpaid tax revenue. It starts with people who care, and we have that. We have the Electoral Court Count Reform and Presidential Transition Improvement Act, which is, I love how shady and salty Joe Biden can be. I love the amount of shade because he didn't have a peaceful transition, y'all. He had a tantrum toddler who literally inspired an insurrection. And Joe Biden said, you know what? No, we're not going to have this again. We're not going to have somebody who clearly lost be able to continuously destabilize our democratic process. So we need to get it together. And with our 117th Congress and Susan Collins, so it's a bipartisan bill, very funny. We have a bill that would change the procedure of counting electoral votes outlined in the Electoral Count of 1887, which it drives me nuts that we are still utilizing stuff from the 1800s. But elements of this bill include specifying that the vice president's role at the joint sessions of Congress is to count electoral votes and is ministerial, and that he or she cannot solely adjudicate disputes over electors. That was in response to Trump trying to force Pence to just throw it all out, just declare him the winner. And it's sad that we have to do stuff like that, but just in case some of you want to play around again and not put an adult in charge, we had to set this bar. Raising the objection threshold at the joint session of Congress to count electoral votes to 1/5 of the members of both the House of Representatives and the Senate. Under the 1887 Electoral Count Act, the threshold is one member from each chamber of Congress. Identifying governors as a single official response for submitting the certificate of ascertainment, identifying the state's electors, unless that official is otherwise identified in the state's law or constitution. That means, even though we normally have allowed secretaries of state to help with that, because of how many corrupt officials are now on record after the January 6th committee as trying to fall into line with Trump's coup, we have to tighten the reins of who is allowed to certify their state's elections. These ridiculous tantrums have consequences, but it's the only way to ensure that we have a fair and stable democracy. And providing for expedited judicial review of certain claims about states certifying or I say certificates identifying their electors. And that, I believe, is in response to people like Miss Ruby and Miss Shea, who were threatened, harassed, treated like they were going to be lynched for doing their job. When you are an elector, you shouldn't be at a job where you have to worry about your life being on the line because you want a fair and safe election. But that was the reality dealing with the MAGA morons. That was the reality of anybody who had to deal with the fallout of 45. And it's sad that we have to make legislation like this, but I am so glad. And now we move on to the Respect for Marriage Act, which just got approved in our Congress. This is recent. The bill passed and was amended on November 29th, 2022. This bill includes removing the definition established in the Defense of Marriage Act of 1996, DOMA, of marriage between a man and a woman and a spouse as any person of the opposite sex for the purpose of federal law, and replacing it with an individual shall be considered married if that individual's marriage is valid in the state where the marriage was entered into. Now, I know that my LGBTQ friends and family wonder what that means. And it means that since we have legalized same sex marriage, as long as your state, which hopefully we can keep states from trying to flip it. I know we have idiots like Deaf Santis trying with his Don't Say Gay, but he cannot topple a federal law that forces him to understand that two grown adults who have the ability to marry should be allowed to legally marry. As long as there is no legal barring, you should not have to worry. And I want to remind people, because I know most know that my partner is not a black man. Big shock there. Our relationship was considered illegal about, I'd say, 50, 60 years ago. I'm giving a little leeway here because I believe Loving versus Virginia happened in the late 60s, but it's still fresh enough in my mind because we celebrate Loving Day every year that people literally had to go to court because they still wanted to deem her race and his race as intermixing. It's like we're both humans. The only difference is my skin pigment is darker. And I'm sure the Lovings felt the same way too. Why are you trying to make this anything but what it was? And after they went after Roe and legitimately threw out Dobbs, our president realized that nothing would be safe in the hands of this current SCOTUS. And this is why this act had to be reinforced so that future potential marriages like mine, and yes, I got the ring, y'all, will be able to be happy and whole and not have the state that we live in use bigotry and prejudice to try to separate us. And it is like that for our LGBTQ couples and everybody who just wants to live happy and have that partnership. Because some people think marriage is, apparently Christians think marriage is sanctifying, but the rest of us don't get to enjoy it if we don't do it their way. And that's not how marriage works. Marriage is a partnership. Marriage is between two people who know that not only do you want somebody who can take care of you in sickness and in health, but if something happens and you're in the hospital, that they can make those decisions for you, for your kids, and take care of things. That is what a marriage partnership is about. And you have denied so many people that. I think it's Sally Ride, and it breaks my heart. She was an American hero who went into space, and she couldn't be her authentic self where people could see, and her partner couldn't even collect anything when Miss Ride passed because that's the prejudice that so many Americans had to live with and the sickness. And I am so glad that this administration realized that we have to put this Respect for Marriage Act on the books so that we can protect from every machination that the GOP has to dehumanize people. And this is on top of executive orders like Biden's student loan debt relief plan, which the GOP is still caterwauling about, even though they took PPE loans. The president said bet cancellation of student debt of 20,000 of student loan debt, Pell Grant recipients, 10,000 for other borrowers, making it 125,000 altogether. Final student loan repayment pause through December 31st, 2022. A reduction in monthly payment amounts and coverage of unpaid monthly interest when a borrower makes monthly payments on time. Expansion of employment types that qualify for public service loan forgiveness, PSFL programs. Increased oversight of higher education programs with higher debt levels, which There were so many predatory schools, and I love that he decided, no, we're coming after you. And this was on September 29th, 2022. This has been a complete year of win, y'all. I know that our media doesn't want us talking about it. They don't, and thank you, respect. I know that in hindsight, misery sells. I worked PR for a bit. I've worked media. It was gaming media, but we learned even in gaming media, toxicity brought more clicks. It is a sad reality that says more about our society than I care to admit. But positivity shouldn't be looked down upon. And while everybody wants to whine and lament and try to distract us, there have been so many wins, so many key things that happen that will move us towards progress in spite the tantrums, in spite the antics. And as we continue to roll out legislation that makes it tougher for people to have arsenals, tougher for people not to pass background checks, as we make it harder for people to just get a gun and shoot up an elementary school, it is because those of us who see that it is not worth it to just stay home. It's not worth it not to cast a ballot. It's not worth it not to know who represents us on the state, local, and national level that has everybody's back. That it is okay to be bipartisan as much as you need to be, but it's not okay to shit on the party to do it. Tim Ryan fucked around and found out in Ohio, lost to JD freaking Vance. And I don't want to end this talking about loss, but I do want to talk about how we need to, as Democrats, start really understanding that it is okay to support actual Democrats. We don't have to be everybody's best friend. The tent doesn't always have to be open to every freaking body because there are too many people who want to exploit our resources, exploit our outreach, exploit us, and don't care about our policies, which a lot of people are starting to understand now as they call us conservatives. No, we're just pragmatic black voters. Thank you very much. That we can't base our voting off your slogan. We can't use to fund the police because we live in societies where we understand that we need law and order. We just don't want the law to take our lives. We understood the assignment and we just need the rest of y'all to catch up with us. And we are seeing such positive things now. Representative Hakeem Jeffries, next in line to take over, and I believe he is going to lead with not only fire but class and grace that Nancy Pelosi has. That's why she picked him to take over for her. We have so much good. Tish James took Trump to task, and he has been convicted on a lot of tax fraud, y'all. And I don't know about you all, but I don't think he's going to dodge a lot of this stuff. I know it's not the perp walk for January 6th that some of you want, but sometimes justice has to be done in a way that is both measured and effective. They are going after the thing that he has the most pride about, and they're going to take that first, and then everything else will fall into place. I believe that. I believe 2023 is going to be an eye-opening year too. Because while the House is going to try to show its behind with Muppets like Mayuri Green acting like her shit don't stink, your days are numbered. We know that there are primaries coming up. We know that this so-called House lead that the Republicans currently have is very shaky at best. We know that we have to certify things way better and that we are working against literal cheaters. But it's not going to stop us. GA taught everybody that. No matter what shenanigans you throw at us, no matter how many roadblocks you put in the path, it will not stop actual progress. And we will keep going on. So I'm telling you, 2022 might have had some sad losses. I feel like when I think about Nichelle Nichols and Angela Lansbury, and not to the same extent, but because she was there for the longest time and it kind of impacted a lot of us Gen Xers, especially Queen Elizabeth's death, because it just felt like somebody who wasn't going to die. I mean, like I said, the only person I'm more worried about right now is Keith Richards, because I was pretty sure that fucking vampire. But when you see so many people from your childhood and so many people that should still be here, people that we've lost over the last few years to COVID and everything else, it really opens your eyes to I'm still here and I cannot focus on the bad all the time. There is so much good to look forward to. And even though we've lost so many names that felt like household staples, there are so many newer names out there making names for themselves in music and entertainment. I watched that video of Lizzo giving praise to so many unsung women, and she's just, I love her. You will never be able to down talk Lizzo around me. She is an amazing entertainment. Little Nas X, who I still think does not get enough credit for not only innovate in music by bringing things like country, pop, techno sound into things, but just being openly, unapologetically himself. And I'm just so sick of people not giving that man his props for being very entertaining. I love his music. I am currently using a lot of his songs as I write. And it is just amazing how not only catchy, but deep some of the things he sings about is. And I'm just glad that we live in a time where not only can we pioneer stuff digitally, but we are watching people just be their authentic self. We used to have entertainment that was constrained, where you knew about certain actors or actresses, but they couldn't openly be who they are. And we are moving past that despite the tantrums of some people. And I am for a time where we look back on the days of having to be closeted, having to be quiet, being in fear of that, being ancient history. I know it can happen. Another thing before I wrap it up, I want to thank everybody who made this possible. From my friend Roger, who designed the cover of this book, my partner, everybody who's bought a copy, everybody who has stood by us and supported us, because, like I said in the mental health vlog, choosing marriage means that a big chunk of my finances are going to take a hit for a while. So I will be putting out not only more content on here and YouTube as much as I mentally can, but I am working with another artist on a webcomic. There's a lot on the horizon, and I look forward to so many projects because I cannot allow my life to be stagnant because of financial restraint. It's just not going to happen. I am way too determined. But we are going to get ready to wrap it up. I don't know where Axiom is. I am going to, I can mail some out in December. I've gotten some DMs. The snow hasn't been as bad here as I thought it was going to be. So we've got a couple of books on hand. If people need it, just let me know. We won't be doing any more bulk orders until probably March or April, though, because I feel bad for my poor mailman as it is. He brought so many boxes of books here when we did the drive, and I know he was like, "What the hell? What are all these boxes for? Why you got so many boxes being delivered here? Why are you so heavy?" Because these are thick books. So I'm so excited to get those out. But I don't know if I can play Jim myself. I know Axiom went up to his parents because, we do a lot of things old fashioned. So, I could redeem it. Yes. Nice. Ooh, Jim. So if you eat tonight, I'm going to go make dinner. Jim is truly outrageous. Truly outrageous. Whoa, Jim. The music's contagious. Jim is my name. No one else is the same. Jim is my name. Our songs are bitter. We are the misfits. And we're gonna get her. Jim. The music's contagious. Jim. I will see you on Tuesday. Thank you so much, ladies, for sitting in. I love and appreciate y'all. I am going to get ready to go make some dinner and then go play some Pokemon with Axiom Wolf. Honey, I'll see you in just a little bit. Love y'all.